So what does a ball of Play-Doh have to do with cooking? Well, stay tuned. This is part of my series on 50 tips and tricks that every cook should know. I've often said that knowledge is power in the kitchen. So this is part of my series on 50 tips and tricks every cook needs to know. This is a series that discusses and demonstrates simple concepts, methods, and techniques that anyone can master to take their cooking to the next level. So hold that thought on the Play-Doh for just a minute. And over the years, I've taught dozens and dozens and dozens of people, if not hundreds, on how to use a knife to cut an onion. So one question I'll always ask every student in any group, do you know how to cut an onion? And almost without exception, 100% will say, yes, I know how to cut an onion. And then I hand them the knife and an onion, and they grab the knife in whatever direction or way they want to. Some grab it like this, some grab it like this, some do it like this. And they take the onion, they peel it, and they use the method that I call the whackety-whack, choppity-chop. They just take the knife and they start whacking and chopping away, and they think they know how to cut an onion. So over the years, I've thought to myself, how can I teach people how to cut an onion without cutting an onion? Well, that's where the Play-Doh comes in, and I'm going to show you that right now. So I was teaching a group of students on how to cut an onion, and none of us want to stand there and cut an onion. It's really a painful process to do that, especially when they're very strong onions. So I was at Walmart one morning thinking, how can I come up with a technique that will teach them how to cut an onion without cutting an onion? So I went down to the little department where the kids' toys are, and I bought a bunch of Play-Doh. I brought it back, and this is what we did. So we're going to take this one step at a time. Here's your onion. We're going to form it into an onion. And you'll notice that an onion is kind of round. It has two ends to it. It has what we call the root end. It has those little hairy little tentacles sticking out there. That's the root end. And that part actually holds the onion together. And then it has the stem end. The stem end is not really essential to what we need to learn today. But the root end is very important. We never want to cut the root end off or we're dicing an onion. So we're going to take our little Play-Doh here. We're going to put a little mark at the top, or you can even take a toothpick or whatever you want to use just to differentiate the stem end from the root end. And we're going to take the onion. I'm going to pull that out because I know that that's the root end. I'm going to take my knife. I'm going to hold it properly, thumb on one side, finger on the other. Good grip here. I'm going to take the onion, hold my fingers back, and I'm going to cut it right down the middle. So we're going to do that over here as well. Cut this right down the middle, and we have onion cut in half with the root end up, and then we have this onion cut in half with the root end still intact. I'm going to go ahead and peel the onion. So I've peeled the onion just so you can get a better look at the anatomy of the onion. There's the root end still intact. Here's the stem end. So I'm going to take the stem end, if I don't lose the onion on the floor there, and I'm going to cut the stem end off. I don't really need that. And I always keep a bowl handy whenever I'm cutting vegetables, just to throw the scraps in and to keep my work area nice and clean. We'll come back to the Play-Doh in just a minute. So take the root end, stick it up here at the top. Here's the root end of my Play-Doh that I marked up here. I'm going to stick it up at the top. Now what I want to do now, there are a couple things we can do. We can cut some horizontal cuts in it. We're not going to do that right now since we're just learning, but we want to make some vertical cuts, keeping the root end intact. So you can see that an onion has all these little lines on it. We're going to take our knife and we're basically going to come down and trace those lines right there, not penetrating the root end of the onion. So I can cut that. The onion's still intact. All these are evenly spaced. The onion's still all held together. That's very important. So why do I have the Play-Doh? I don't want to practice on onions all the time. So I'm going to just practice this with my Play-Doh, cutting it just like I would the onion. My root end is intact. My onion's still held together. I've got my other piece over here, root end there. Keeping my fingers curled back, and we'll learn how to do that. I've cut it. It's still intact just like the onion is. So you can learn how to cut an onion by using Play-Doh. So just practice that over and over again if you don't want to cut an onion time and time again. But we're going to take that and set it aside. Now we're going to take our onion and we're going to turn it sidewise so the lines are running this way. And we're going to take our knife and we're going to come over here and we're just going to do like this. Keep that tip down, press down on it using this sweet spot of the knife, and we have a perfect dice. So get down there, and it's nicely diced. It's all pretty consistent. Remember, consistency of cut is consistency of cooking. We're going to push that aside over here. We're going to take our Play-Doh, our onion. We're going to do the same thing with it. Turn it sideways. You can see how I've done that right there. Just take the knife. See how we're making those nice little dices? It's hard to tell really, but if you get over here and look carefully, you can see nice little dices there. And again, I've learned to cut an onion without cutting an onion, without all the tears. So that's basically the way you do it. So you may have to watch this video a couple times just to get the hang of it. Nothing to it. And once you learn how to cut an onion properly, it's going to revolutionize the way you cook. So let's go ahead and take this one and peel it. We'll show you one more little technique here while we're dicing an onion. So I peel that onion. I'm going to take my Play-Doh over here. There's my root end. I'm going to cut through it just like we did before. Put the root end down away from me, and I'm going to turn it actually sideways. And this time I'm going to make some horizontal cuts across it. So I'm going to bring it up to the edge of my board there, take the sweet spot of my knife, stick it in there, and pull the knife toward me, making a couple, 2 or 3 horizontal cuts. This will give you a finer dice. So I've made the horizontal cuts. Now I'm going to make the vertical cuts along the line there. Okay, so I actually cut it horizontally, I've cut it vertically. Now let's do it with a real onion over here. Take the knife, insert it, pull it toward me. Don't go through the root end. Keep those fingers up. And this is more advanced technique, so if you're a beginner, don't try this. This is more advanced. So I made those horizontal cuts. I'm going to make my vertical cuts, guiding with my finger, curled fingers, holding the knife properly. Let's do it nice and slow. Just don't try to be real fast. And see, I've got a little, you can compare the two dices here. This one's going to be just a little finer because I made those horizontal cuts in the onion. So look at that compared to that. See how those are a little larger? This is the way I prefer to do it. Now, some chefs will tell you not to do it, some instructors. I'm a firm believer in making those horizontal cuts to give me a lot more consistent onion. Now, we don't want the whackety-whack, choppity-chop method where we just take that onion and we just put it on the table and chop it like that. That looks kind of cool to do that. There's no need to do it when we learn to do it the proper way. So this is a little tip and trick that you need to know, how to cut an onion. Practice, buy you some Play-Doh at Walmart, and start cutting away. So thank you for watching my series today on 50 tips and tricks you need to know to become a better cook. And I hope that you like this channel, learn something from it. Be sure to hit the like button down below, subscribe, tell all your friends, and I'll see you next week on All Things Food with John Woods.